Member Blackerby?
Here.
Burnham?
Here.
France? Horn?
Here.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Vice Chair Bosch?
Here. Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Nope.
Okay. Then we will move on to public comment. And I do have one request to speak for public comment, and that's Susan Horn.
Good evening. I'm speaking as... Hello. I'm speaking as a member of the public right now and a representative of COAST, COAST, which is an organization, the initials stand for Coalition for Sustainable Transportation. And what I wanted to just let you know is that COAST is being the umbrella for a new concept for reducing traffic injuries and deaths. It's called Vision Zero. And of course, that means the goal is zero traffic injuries and deaths. And it fits really well with Public Works and everything that is the mission already for Public Works and the Traffic Division. And so we're already moving in that direction. And what I hope is that as partners, with people in the community as well as with the city, that we'll be able to do more than we've been able to do in the past, just because of more energy into it from many different areas. So this model of Vision Zero is already in effect in New York City and in San Francisco for several years, and they have had really good success reducing injuries and deaths already. So it's pretty impressive. And as we know, we do have a problem with injuries and deaths in our small city. And so this is an effort to add energy to that. And our plan is to find other allies to partner with. And one of our first jobs will be to help craft a resolution that we hope can go on the agenda of the City Council in the next few months. So, and as far as, how do you do it? How do you reduce injuries and deaths? More of what we're already doing, of course, with the city, but including more education and policies would be involved, and infrastructure. Those are the things that I know about. And we just hope that this will be a wonderful addition to what's already being done. The end.
All right, thank you. If there's no more public comment, we'll move. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
I abused the position and didn't fill out a slip. Mike Jordan, City Planning Commissioner. I just wanted to stop by. We've rotated liaisons at the start of the year, so this is your first committee meeting. And I'm trying to think back. It might have been 5 years ago in my first year that I was liaison here, so you pretty much have all turned over. I know Hillary. Bob, you and I have sat on a downtown host table together, so we know each other. Nice. But just wanted to give you a face to a name. You won't normally see me here. This is my one Thursday off a month from Planning Commission, so you have the unfortunate day and night that you're not going to see me. But I do annoy everybody at home watching Channel 18 or sneak away to my computer. So the point I wanted to make really was that what resonates with me may not be what you think I should know about. So I will watch, and I do see the agendas, and I am interested, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm taking what you thought I should have taken back to Planning Commission lunch meetings or Planning Commission. And so I'd just like to encourage you that if there is something that you think has a connection to something that's going on in the Commission or something we will be talking about or a particular project that kind of falls within the scope of the committee, then certainly ask staff to reach out and poke me and get me engaged and have me watch a particular item for sure. Or you could, I'm happy to share my email staff will share my email address with you, and we could talk back and forth on something that really you think we should engage on. So I'm going to scoot out of here, so don't take it personally, but just wanted to make sure you had a name to the face. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
So now, if there's no more public comment, we'll move on to the consent calendar and the approval of the minutes for December 11th, 2014.
I'd move approval.
I'll second it.
Madam Chairman?
Yes?
I have one question. Under the TCC comments, I'm not sure what paragraph it is, but I'll read what I wrote here. It says, Ms. Blackerby pointed out that Oak Park is hard to get to, especially from the State Street side. And I was a little confused. Are you, if you're referring to Oak Park, then I'm assuming you mean Alomar along.
I meant I guess the eastern side of the park, so the east side of the park. So what is that? Talent, I guess, is what it's up against, but the State Street end, the end closest to State Street is what I meant.
Okay.
As opposed to Dnipro.
Well, I know there's lack of sidewalk along part of Alomar there too.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
We'll clarify that in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. Should we have a vote for that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and so the first item on our agenda is the election of the chair and vice chair for the next year. Not sure what the best way to go about that is.
So usually on this item, you'll get a nomination from one of the group. I'll just note traditionally the vice chair becomes the chair. So if you're willing, the committee members may want to do that, but we do need to know who that vice chair will be as well. So however you want to handle it, you can do one. Usually you do the chair first and then the vice chair.
Okay, let's do that.
I'll nominate Cynthia Bosch for chair.
Second?
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I guess I'm the chair.
Yay, congratulations.
And for vice chair, do we have any nominations?
I'm curious if Mr. Burnham is interested in being vice chair or Ms. Rodriguez. I've already gotten a solid no from Ms. Horn.
I am.
You are? Okay, then I would nominate Mr. Burnham for vice chair.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Opposed? All right, congratulations.
Nice. Congrats. Yay.
So in case you are unable to come, let me know. And,
Right.
I will sub in for you.
Okay. So the next item is the bicycle master plan update, and I think Peter Brown is going to present.
Madam Chair, yes, we're going to have Peter Brown, our mobility coordinator, come up and do that. I just want to say that as things are heating up in the bicycle master plan, staff is getting extremely excited about all the work we're doing, and Peter's just doing a wonderful job, and we're excited to present everything we've done to date to you.
Chair Bosch, members of the committee, one minor correction to Mr. Dayton's word. I'm not going to present everything we've done to date. I'm going to give maybe about a 10-minute overview of what we've accomplished. If folks are watching or the committee members want to take note, we've tentatively scheduled an April 7th City Council update. So we will do probably a more robust update for the council of work to date and upcoming excitement as we move forward with the bike master plan. One thing I will say is that I feel like we've hired the right consultants. Our team of Melendrez and Fair and Peers have been very responsive and very professional in terms of meeting the goals that the council has set out. The primary one is doing a robust and broad community outreach process in order to really gauge the pulse of the community and find out what Santa Barbara wants to do next with the bike master plan. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you a couple things we have. These are not live links for the public. They're not on the internet or the World Wide Web, but they may be soon when they're finalized. But I'm going to give you all a sneak preview of some of the things we've done in terms of our Bicycle Master Plan website, as well as the beginnings of thoughts around an online survey. So one of the things I think that's most important to note that we've accomplished before we take a look at the website is our baseline data analysis. We've looked at collisions. Actually, Derek and Badad from Traffic Engineering are here, and they've done some great work in terms of analyzing the data we have, categorizing it by location and type of collisions between cyclists and drivers, or cyclists alone, or cyclists and pedestrians. So we have a really good start, and we've got some preliminary maps for where those collisions are taking place and where they're concentrated. So the next step is to figure out those categories. Are more types of left turn or right turn collisions or doorings occurring when someone opens a door into a bike lane? Where are those occurring and in what numbers over the last 10 years? So I'm very pleased with the work to date. A big push, obviously, for the bike plan will be safety. We've heard that loud and clear from members of the public and from the council. That'll be a recurring theme. So that baseline data is looking very good. I would also say that the month of May looks to be, well, it's Cycle Mania here in Santa Barbara County with the M-A-Y in all caps. And we are lining up to do 3, probably more like 5, we're calling them summits. These will be our big neighborhood meetings around mid-May. The dates aren't nailed down exactly. One of those will be in Spanish, para la comunidad latina, que posiblemente están mirando este programa. Bienvenidos. Vamos a estar comunicando con toda la comunidad en español. So we will have a bilingual presentation. All of our materials will be in Spanish as well. So we want to make sure we're inclusive to the Latino community, which I think is a pretty high number here in Santa Barbara. It's around 30 or 40%. And then we also are going to move away from just traditional charrette style, or let's all pile into a room and talk about a plan. And one of the ways we're going to do that, hopefully, at the end of May, on May 30th, we have a tentative date for what we're calling a pop-up event, where we'll go out into the community in physical space. We're not quite sure where yet, but we will maybe attempt to design a bike facility for a day, invite the community to come out, experience it, give us their feedback, maybe take our survey if they haven't done so yet, and really have, I would call, an interactive bike planning exercise, which I think is important. And our consultant has experience doing this before. So that is also good. Those are some of the highlights that come to mind to pay attention for as we move forward. And let's just take a look now at our not live draft website. We're going to have a couple of things. This is something that Mr. Dayton has been pushing us hard to make sure we accomplish, and that is a cutting-edge multimedia video that's 3 to 5 minutes long that really captures the essence of what the bike plan may or may not do and what the community's thoughts are about it. This is a really important piece that, you'll see it anytime you use social media these days. Especially younger people are very familiar and accustomed to seeing these videos to process information. So we're going to pretty much have everyone take a look at the video who comes to our website. This is kind of a draft of what the website will look like. Viewing the video hopefully will be a precursor to taking the survey, and it'll really frame the survey. So the 10 or so survey questions, we're going to take a peek at those as well, will really be best answered after you've looked at the video. This tab here, I know the Bike Coalition, and Mr. France could speak to this perhaps in more detail if he chooses, has already done something like this, where they've had an interactive Google map and they've had people drop pins and points and identify where there could be improvements, obstacles. We'd like to do that again in our broad-based approach. We think that's a really good way to gather information. So if you want to share your thoughts, you can talk to us about a favorite destination, a desirable bike route, a difficult crossing, or even an undesirable bike route. You can give us the location. You can describe it a little bit if you want, name and email, and then Well, that's different. That's just do you want it to be private or public? And this is a way for us to gather. So you'll be able to fill out this brief information, drop a pin somewhere in the city, and describe that. I'll just use an example here. Getting under Castillo Street is a problem for a bicyclist. And then the more we hear this reoccurring themes, it'll really help us direct our attention. Maybe even bring Caltrans into the room. So that is a look at kind of our interactive mapping and questionnaire type. And we'll also, of course, have our video. We'll have a summary of what the plan is supposed to do. The online survey will be here. We'll have the project timeline. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter. The Facebook page is live. You can like Santa Barbara SB BMP on Facebook, and that'll be another place where you can follow activities. Again, I would say these neighborhood summits, these 5 meetings or so, are going to be right around mid-May. The last one will be the last day of May 30th on a Saturday. That's our pop-up activity event. And this is another thing that we've spent a lot of time on, just so you're all aware, is this outreach and media strategy. So we really have, in about 10 pages or so, just an outline and a detail of how we're going to do our outreach, which groups we're going to include. Another key component is this tool that we're calling stakeholder roadshows. Now, stakeholder roadshows will be folks like Derek. He doesn't know I'm volunteering him right now. Derek Bailey, our traffic engineer, or Rob Dayton, our principal transportation planner, or myself will go to your group, if it's Coast or SB Bike or the Chamber of Commerce, AAA, you name it. If you have an organization that wants a detailed dial down on the Bike Master Plan, we will come to you. We will show you our website. We will give you a one-on-one chance to give us your feedback. I don't know how many of these we're going to schedule, but we're going to say yes as long as we can until we have to say no because we've already done 30 or 40 of them. So the stakeholder roadshows, I'm going to send out an email pretty soon to a list of stakeholders that I have so far and just say, hey, schedule us, invite us, let us know what time, what day, and we will come to you. And this will give us another chance to meet that council directive of every group gets their chance to weigh in. And then the last thing I'll show you, and then I'll wrap up and open for questions, is the survey that I've had some input from a lot of staff so far, and I'm welcome to input from the committee. But right now, in a draft form, we'll have the video, again, the same video from the last page, and then a set of questions. Things like, what's your primary mode of transportation? I take the most number of trips in a week from one of these modes. Do you identify with any of these groups? We've got business owners. Are you a female? Are you a student? Those type of questions. Do you think Santa Barbara is a safe and comfortable place to ride? Well, I think it's pretty safe. I ride my bike more than once a week, so I might click moderate. So this is kind of going to get at, I'm not going to go through all the questions, but we do think that the way the survey is structured and the type of questions we're asking is really going to help us drill down in the plan on what the community wants. We will be able to filter this by different categories, and we'll be able to really get an understanding of what the community is after. Do they want to preserve on-street parking? Is that a number one goal? Does the community really want to see existing bike infrastructure improved? Do they want to close gaps in the system? We're asking all of these really important questions. And so the survey is something that we're only going to have people fill out once. You can't go back and survey again and again. I'm not sure who has time for that, but that won't be allowed. But this is just a peek at where we are. And I don't know if Mr. Dayton has anything to wrap up, but I think for me that kind of gives you the feel of how far we've come. The next month we'll start to get the media outreach out there. We'll start to schedule the stakeholder roadshows. April 7th will be a council update, kind of a midterm, so to speak. And then May will be our real big push for neighborhood meetings and community feedback. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a question. Will the website or some of the web stuff be in Spanish?
Yes.
Okay. The whole
all
deal?
of it will be
and the video and
translatable.
Survey and all
I do
that?
not know if we can do the video in Spanish.
Okay.
We could have subtitles. on some of the stuff. That's going to be a little more difficult technically, but certainly the survey, which is going to be super important, will be in Spanish.
Just because if you have to watch the video to do the survey,
yeah,
you should know what.
Right, and a lot of it's visual and graphic, so that's one of the nice things about the video is it's not going to be language intensive. It's going to be a lot of pictures. It's going to be a few snippets and sound bites. But again, if anyone needs any Spanish language translation, I am here to help you. So I invite that.
Yeah. Madam Chair. Yes. Peter, thank you for all the hard work you put into this. It sounds like it's well underway. How the stakeholder roadshow? How long, approximately, is a presentation?
I think the presentation will be in that 15 to 20-minute range. I'd rather have the stakeholder roadshows focus on conversation and input from the groups we go to.
Okay.
So that would leave that, 40 to, I guess we could schedule even 90-minute meetings. But for me, do what we can in an hour and even spend an extra 30 minutes at the end if the conversation needs to go longer.
Okay. And on your list of folks to present these to, were you including folks like the Kiwanis and Rotary and Lions and some of the service clubs and organizations like that, or is it more business entities? Did you have any particular type of group in mind?
We are as open as we need to be. So all of those groups are included. I don't know if I specifically have Kiwanis or Lions, but I'll add them. I have an ongoing Google spreadsheet. And any suggestion you have, the one that you just made, Mr. Burnham, that'll be included. So, and we will invite them to schedule with us.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Would you mind just giving us a few ideas of groups that are already 4 or 5 that are already on your list that you plan to go to?
Well, a big push will be with our neighborhood associations. We have a whole lot of neighborhood associations. We have very active components of the community. They're on our list. A lot of our nonprofit organizations are on our list. Government partners, MTD certainly would be one that we'd think about engaging. Again, I'd say that right now that stakeholder list is around 50 or 60 organizations or individuals or neighborhood leaders long. But what I do right now, as opposed to craft that list with TCC, is I would invite you to send me an email or to send anyone here an email, Rob or Kim, and we will add any suggestion you have specifically to include to make sure that we make them available to those groups.
Cool. Thank you. Ed?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry if I missed this, but just a quick question. When do you all plan to have the video online and kind of launch the video and survey?
That's a good question, Mr. France. Today is February 26th. Mm-hmm. I'd say give us about 2 more weeks. And I think in that time frame, I know there's a State of the City presentation coming up. I believe that the mayor is considering doing a minute or 2 on the Bicycle Master Plan update. We certainly are pondering having that video run at that time and having the survey be available. That's another audience that we can certainly invite to come to the page. So we're in that 2 to 3 week time frame.
Great. So anything else on the Bicycle Master Plan update? All right. Then we will move on to the Cliff Drive Community Engagement Process and Outcomes.
Good evening, Chair Bosch and committee members. My name is Derek Bailey. I'm with the city's traffic engineering group. And I'm going to share with you a project that we're working on, potential Cliff Drive traffic safety project. So just an outline of the presentation, I'm going to go through kind of the purpose, why I'm here tonight, some of the background of how we got here. It's kind of an interesting journey, grant opportunity that we have for this project, the public outreach that we've done, the project description and trade-offs, and the next steps, where we're going to go from here. So the purpose, it really boils down to this spring, probably in April, there's going to be a call for projects for a traffic safety grant. And we need the public's input. Should we go for it? Should we pursue this grant opportunity for traffic safety changes on Cliff Drive? So just by way of background, the line in red on the map shows the old State Route 225 as it works its way down Las Positas Road and then Cliff Drive over through the Mesa over to the Castillo Street interchange. January 2014, the state of California relinquished everything that is here in red to the city of Santa Barbara. So they're now city streets. Through this process, we attended a lot of community meetings, a lot of neighborhood forums, just people sharing their vision with us for what they want Cliff Drive, mostly Cliff Drive, to be like. Las Positas is included in the corridor, but a lot of what we heard is Cliff Drive cuts through the Mesa neighborhood, and a lot of people expressed an interest in having it feel more like a neighborhood street. So some of the specific things we heard about is Cliff Drive should have bike lanes. You know, there was a bike lane project implemented on Cliff Drive in 2011, but it did end. It only did about half, and so there's some interest in continuing that, make it continuous. Improved and more frequent pedestrian crossing locations. That was a big one. Improved lighting. There was a lighting project a few years ago, but again, it didn't cover the whole corridor. And a continuous center left turn lane. It's kind of starts and stops depending on where you are in the corridor right now. As well, we have been talking to Santa Barbara City College. They're a big stakeholder along the corridor, and they've expressed a desire for improved safety along their frontage. So the expected grant opportunity that we have, like I said, we're expecting a call for projects in April. It's called the Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP for short. It's administered by Caltrans, but it's federal money. And the improvements that we propose as part of the project have to be based on a demonstrated collision history. So a good example would be if you had a turn in the road and there was just a pattern of people firing off the end of that road, a guardrail would be a good solution to that. So for this particular grant opportunity, we're looking at a pattern of bicycle based collisions, a history of. So we think based on the number of bicycle collisions there have been in the past, we'll be quite competitive, and we're pretty optimistic that if we do go for this grant opportunity that we will get awarded the project. So just some other nearby projects that are happening on this corridor. There's this project that we're talking about. What I've shown in red here kind of shows the areas that this project would be. The dashed line there, that's the restriping that would happen in 2011. The roundabout that is in design right now that City Council has approved funding for, that's expected to be under construction in 2016. And then finally, the Las Positas and MODOC multi-use pathway project that we're just negotiating a scope of work with a design consultant right now, and we hope to move forward with that project real soon. So lots of things going on in the corridor, all touching one another, and we have to be thoughtful about how they all fit together. This shows an aerial diagram of the restriping that was done in 2011. So this is Meigs Road on the left side of the screen here, and this is Cliff Drive. As we're moving east, and we're going from 2 lanes in each direction to the 1 lane in each direction with bike lanes, wider parking lanes, and center turn lane. So that's the restriping that was done in 2011, and overall we've received very positive comments on that restriping that was done. And a lot of the questions we get is, well, why didn't it go further? So it's not as straightforward once you start moving to the west, and those are some of the trade-offs that we really wanted to talk to the community about and make sure that they had a full understanding of everything that was involved. So project description, like I mentioned, this This restriping that we would potentially do as part of this project, not as straightforward as the restriping that was done in 2011 between Meigs and Santa Barbara City College. The two big factors that makes it complicated is the shopping center traffic around the Meigs Road intersection, and as well the complex intersection at Cliff Drive and Mesa Lane, Flora Vista. Yeah. It's an offset intersection, meaning the two side streets don't come in right across from one another like most intersections do, and that creates a special challenge that I'll talk about in a sec here. So anyway, because of these challenges, we really wanted the public to understand what those challenges are and the trade-offs involved with doing a restriping like was done a few years ago. So public outreach done to date. We went to the City Council on September 30th last year just to give them a heads up about this project, because it is a grant opportunity to bring some money into the community and make some traffic safety improvements, but it wasn't in the city's 6-year CIP at the time. We do have it in there now for the next budget cycle, but we really wanted their permission to start engaging with the community about this because it wasn't something that had been publicly vetted before. We had a public workshop on November 5th at Monroe School in the Mesa that we had a great turnout, had a really good discussion with the community, really good engagement, just to talk about the trade-offs and kind of get their feedback about are we on the right track or not. As well, we made a city website presentation. It was Santa Barbara ca.gov/Cliff Drive, and we had what we called on there a virtual public meeting. So we had a video that showed the presentation we gave on November 5th, and as well there was the same comment form that people could give feedback to us. So we gathered all that feedback, and I'm here to share that feedback with you tonight, what we heard from the community. So I'm going to kind of go through some of the trade-offs, and then I'll also talk about what we heard from the community about those trade-offs. So here's that offset intersection at Cliff Drive, Mesa Lane, Flora Vista that I was talking about. It's complicated. Part of the problem here, because the two streets don't line up with one another, we have to have these side-by-side left turn lanes in order to provide access into the neighborhoods. And those side-by-side left turn lanes, if you look on either side of the screen as Cliff Drive's approaching this intersection, the traffic lanes actually bend out towards the curb because we get this fatter area here in the center in order to accommodate the left turn lane. So you can see the traffic lanes out here. There just isn't that much room between the lanes and the curb as you would see, say, a couple hundred feet to the east. So there's not enough room for bike lanes. That's the conundrum we have here. Widening the road would be very expensive, so that wasn't considered to be a viable option. Like I said, the side-by-side left turn lanes does create a problem. There's storage in each of those side-by-side left turn lanes for 3 vehicles. So 3 vehicles can stack up waiting to turn into the neighborhood. This is the solution that we identified. So instead of the back-to-back left or the side-by-side left turn lanes, we create 2 shorter back-to-back left turn lanes. And because they're not side-by-side anymore, they're fit into a tighter area in the middle of the road, then there's room to do things on the outside of the road, like a bike lane. So this is the big trade-off that we really wanted the community to understand. These back-to-back left turn lanes can hold 2 vehicles, not 3. We know that about 10% of the time during peak hours that we need storage for 3 vehicles, and here's what's going to happen. You're going to get that third vehicle is going to spill out into the through lane. That's a trade-off. That's a big trade-off. It affects the capacity of the intersection, but in terms of how to allocate space within this area, it does provide us an opportunity to get bike lanes through this intersection. And so we asked the community point blank, like we showed them this graphic and explained the trade-off. 77% thought it was a good trade-off. That's pretty high in government world. So anyway, we took that feedback as we want to move forward with this. That's what the community told us by saying that. Some of the other features that we would have to do, in addition to the restriping, is we'd have to rearrange the traffic signal indications just because we're moving the left turn lanes, and we'd have to make the left turn arrows and everything a little bit easier to see. So we would actually put in islands on either side of the intersection, and there'd be new poles in the middle holding traffic signal indications. So just some of the technical things we'd have to do to make this intersection continue to function. Like I said, there'd be about spillback about 10% of the time during peak periods. That's the trade-off. 77% thought this was a good trade-off. The other complicated thing on this corridor is the shopping center traffic. So this is an aerial of Cliff Drive as it passes by the shopping center just west of Meigs. There's a lot of driveways along here that feed into the shopping center, and as well across the street along the south side of Cliff Drive. A lot of businesses have driveways, a lot of turning movements, vehicles turning in and out of these driveways. There's enough going on here, and the traffic volumes are high enough that we should maintain 2 lanes in each direction. So that's complicated because we were talking about with the community potentially going down to 1 lane in each direction. The good news is that the street is wide enough that we can actually narrow the lanes a little bit. It's a 64-foot wide street, and we can still maintain perfectly adequate lane widths, 10.5 to 11 feet throughout the lanes, and get enough room for a striped bike lane on the outside of the street. So that's pretty straightforward. That kind of restriping is pretty non-controversial. One thing we wanted to talk to the community about was this potential concept of wide, narrow, wide, which talk about here. We just talked about the intersection of Mesa Lane and Flora Vista. We need to continue 2 lanes in each direction just through that intersection just to get through there because of the traffic signal phasing. And we need 2 lanes in each direction in front of the shopping center. What to do in the middle? So that's why I say wide, narrow, wide. One option is to go 1 lane in each direction. We would taper from 2 lanes down to 1 lane in each direction with the bike lanes, the center turn lane, and the wide parking lanes on either side. Another option is just continue 2 lanes in each direction between the two, but that would blow out all the parking on the street. So what we heard from everybody, or most people, is that 67% like the idea of 1 lane in each direction. So that seems to be pretty good direction for staff. A few other things that we talked about that we don't have to decide right now because it's just striping and paint on the road is one is the Cliff and Meigs intersection. Currently, there's when you're going eastbound, there's 2 lanes, 2 through lanes that continue through the intersection, and then when you get east of the intersection, those 2 lanes merge into 1 right there. And a lot of people find that awkward. We heard from a lot of people that they don't like that merge. What's not shown in the aerial diagram here is Lighthouse that feeds down to Washington Elementary School is just off the edge of that picture. And are people turning onto Washington, or are they going straight? And so a lot of people we talked to found that to be a kind of an awkward configuration. An alternative, there's the merge. An alternative to that is to do 1 lane through and turn this outside lane into a forced right turn lane. That gets rid of that merge condition on the east side. Eastbound through, eastbound dedicated right. The only downside to that is that the queue length in that through lane for eastbound is going to get a little bit longer. And it might get a little bit harder for people to get out of the driveways for these businesses. So it's not something we need to decide now as we're applying for the grant. We'll study it in a little bit more detail between now and project implementation. And we do not recommend a westbound dedicated right turn lane, so that one is pretty straightforward. Further east, this is the Cliff Drive as it's passing by the west campus of Edinburgh City College. There's Loma Alta. The bike lanes end just at the left edge of the aerial diagram here. It's kind of awkward because a lot of students want to continue on to the east campus where there's a lot of activity for the Santa Barbara City College. We can accommodate bike lanes here pretty easily, actually. If we eliminate this raised median, again, we can do the same kind of thing that we just talked about in front of the shopping center by just moving the lanes in a little bit towards the center of the street. Really quite easy to do. And removing the median's not detrimental. Medians are a great tool that we have in traffic engineering for what we call access control. So if we have driveways that are near intersections, and sometimes streets are just so busy, we don't want people turning left out of those driveways really close to intersections. Can be a traffic safety issue. If we put a median in, it forces everybody to turn right. So access control, we're controlling how people access the road and access sites. In this case, there is no access along here. The nearest access is way out at the end of the median. So we could remove that median, not affect access control at all, and accommodate bike lanes. So at this end of the Cliff Drive corridor, it seems pretty straightforward as well. Further east, as you start heading down the viaduct towards Castillo Street, that gets really complicated, and we don't have a plan for that area yet. But as far as restriping to get cyclists this far, from there it's an easy connection on the Loma Alta, which gets you down to the beach and onto the East Campus as well. So this seems to be a really good connection point. The other thing that we wanted to engage the community about was future pedestrian improvements on Cliff Drive. We don't have any money and funding identified right now, but we hope to soon, and we want to know from the community where to start. Because it's a high-speed corridor, just putting paint down on the ground and a couple fluorescent green signs on the side of the road isn't going to change driver behavior and make pedestrians more noticeable to drivers. If you think people driving 40 or 45 miles an hour, how much ground you can cover so fast, a painted line across the street, drivers come up on that pretty quick compared to when they're driving 25 or 30 miles an hour. So it's going to take something more active, like a traffic signal, like the flashing beacons that we're using, something to get drivers' attention from a further distance away. So we asked the community where should we start? And the folks at the meeting said Camino Calma, Oliver area, which is immediately west of that shopping center, just west of Meigs. Those two intersections, Camino Calma and Oliver, are really close to one another. So if we were to provide a crossing at either one of those locations functionally, that'd kind of accomplish the same thing. And the other location is Santa Cruz. We've heard a lot about Santa Cruz, even dating back to when this was still a Caltrans facility. That's about midway between Meigs and Santa Barbara City College. So, we'll pursue funding, and when it becomes available, I think these will be the two locations that we focus on first. So next steps, based on the... Yes, Ms. Horn.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just before you go on to this next step, could I ask something about the one of the traffic situations you were talking about earlier? I didn't quite figure out what my question was when you were on it, but you were talking about parking is going to be eliminated if there's a bike lane put in between, let's see, starting like at Oliver toward Las Positas.
Right.
That section, and I don't, I live right there, and I rarely see anyone parking on that road, on either side.
Right.
At least in my area.
Yeah, we've noticed that too. Can I come back to that? Because I think it'd be good to go back to that slide. This is my last slide, and then I'll...
Yeah, sure. Sure, go ahead.
So the next steps for our process is apply for the HSIP grant. Like I said, that's probably going to be in April when Caltrans does a call for projects. We'll likely get the results from that back in summer of 2016. And construction summer 2015. I'm sorry, that's when we will get the results back this summer. And construction likely in late 2016, early 2017. We'll try and do it at the same time that the roundabout is being built so that everything just fits seamlessly together, those two adjacent projects. Thanks for your patience. I'm going to go back to a different slide. There it is. Okay. So two options that we talked about with the community in this section between Mesa Lane, Flora Vista, that's that offset intersection, and the shopping center at Miggs, is what to do in between. Because we know we have to have 2 lanes in each direction in front of the shopping center. And we know we have to have 2 lanes in each direction through this complex intersection. One option is to taper from 2 lanes in each direction down to 1 lane in each direction. And that means we still have enough room on the outside of the road for on-street parking. The other alternative is just to maintain 2 lanes in each direction. And that would, in order to have enough width to have 2 lanes in each direction, we wouldn't have enough room for on-street parking. Either way, we are going to have to get rid of a little bit more parking down towards Mesa Lane and Flora Vista, just where the lanes taper together. There's a bit of a condition there that we'd need to eliminate parking for. It's been our observation, too, that it's not a heavily parked street.
That's an understatement.
But
Yeah.
for bike, but bike, if you went down to 1 lane, you'd have room for bike lane.
There'd be room either way.
Either way, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And a center turn lane either way. Just the question is, do you want parking and 1 lane in each direction, or no parking and 2 lanes in each direction? And looking at the feedback we got, it was 67% of people liked the 1 lane in each direction, and 21% 2 lanes in each direction, and 12% didn't have an opinion. What I heard at the meeting was one of the big reasons people like the 1 lane in each direction is they like the feel between Miggs and City College better than 2 lanes in each direction. It wasn't necessarily the parking they were most concerned of, but it feels more like a neighborhood street that way. From a traffic capacity perspective, either way works fine. It's just more of a feel and how important the parking was to the community, and I think it was more of a feel.
I just wondered if you noticed that there was hardly ever anybody parking in that section.
It's pretty sparse.
But you have noticed. So
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There's a little bit more down towards Flora Vista that I've noticed, but especially as you get east, closer to the shopping center, there's not a lot of on-street parking.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
That's my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chair. Okay, Mr. Bailey, thank you. I noticed most of this project appears to be roadway concerns, and you mentioned the pedestrian concerns. Is there any priority or effort in the project to look at sidewalk sidewalk replacement or infill?
Mr. Burnham, the project features that we include in the project, it is a federally funded project, and the federal government, the way they've set up the program is that the features that they'll pay for, they have to correct some safety issue that's been demonstrated by a collision history. So if we had a pattern of pedestrians walking in the street because there were no sidewalks in a certain area, then they would potentially fund sidewalks. But because there hasn't been any collisions like that, the focus of the project just is bike facilities and center turn lane. That's what we're focused on.
Kim, this mic isn't working.
I think it's on now.
Test. The reason I ask is because I noticed the few times I've gone over to Lazy Acres and the shopping center, the sidewalk extending east from Miggs on the north side of Cliff is in horrible condition. The surface is inconsistent. Part of it's dirt. Part of it's real rough gravel going down to the westbound near side bus stop for MTD, and beyond that, that whole sidewalk along there, as opposed to the sidewalk over on the west side of Cliff Drive going down toward Lighthouse. That sidewalk's beautiful. There's a bus shelter there, and that's, I'm not sure how new that is, but it's completely different from the sidewalk on the east side. And I'm wondering if there's any prospect of improving that particular stretch, being it's that close to the shopping center.
Mr. Burnham, it's when the city took over State Route 225, there's a long list of items that we thought could be improved upon with this corridor. Unfortunately, when we did take the corridor on, it didn't come with any prospects of additional funding. So we do have to seek grants like this in order to make improvements. And right now, there doesn't appear to be any grants to make that specific improvement that you're talking of. I know exactly, it's that island right in front of the little frontage road. And I know there's a bus stop there. The access to the bus stop is not the greatest. But right now, there is no defined funding for that project.
Thank you. My other question, you mentioned the dedicated right turn lane eastbound on Cliff Drive, right turn on to Miggs or Lighthouse?
One of the options would be a dedicated right turn lane from Miggs from Cliff onto Miggs, eastbound Cliff to Miggs. Thank you.
Hillary?
Yeah, and on that, I think one of the parts. So I attended the thing at Monroe School, right? Which I really appreciated. I thought it was very interesting. It was cool to see a bunch of people there, and I thought the presentation was really well done, made very clearly, and then broken out into groups to where people could really drill down and talk about what they want to see in their neighborhood. That one piece with the forced right turn lane, which I think is great, was that, it's much safer for bicyclists because the bike lane would continue on to the left of the forced right turn lane, and they wouldn't have to compete as they do now sometimes to either juke over a lane or just hope someone doesn't hit them when they turn right. So that was a real benefit. And I appreciate at the Flora Vista piece, you're working with what you got. It's kind of horrible, and I want to know who we can blame in our city's history for making that happen, that configuration. I'm also curious as to if you know why that raised median was put there. Does anybody know where that came from? The one by City College?
I don't.
Just because it looks nice. I don't know. Yeah. It's so weird. I've always wondered because it's not keeping, and if anything, it gives kind of a false sense of security. If someone wanted to run across the street to I've seen people standing on it or whatever, it's not helpful. So I think it's a great idea to try to bust that up and move forward. So yeah, I hope you're successful with the grants. If I know Derek Bailey, I know that as I knock on wood as I say this guy knows how to get grant money. So I'm very excited. Can't wait for it to come. And then can't wait for the ribbon cutting ceremony where we unveil all of the things done on Cliff and Las Positas. And I just am really appreciative of staff that you've gone this far and worked with what you've been given, taking over the facility and just working to really make it all fit well together and make it a lot safer. So really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before you ask any more questions, Derek, do you want to tell them about to the west of Flora Vista, plans down the hill? I don't think you presented on that. Future plans, possible future plans?
Possible future plans. Well, yeah, thanks, Rob. No, I don't mean that in a bad way. Just trying to get to an aerial photograph might help. Okay, this is as good as we have here. So this is Mesa Lane, and 2 lanes in each direction. And the next stop, once you're west of this area, you go down the hill, And that's when you get to the Las Positas intersection. It's currently the all-way stop. That's where the roundabout's going in. That roundabout's going to have one entry lane and one exit lane. So at that point, when you're at the Las Positas intersection, it's one lane in each direction. And so somewhere in between the roundabout and this intersection here, we've got to go from one lane in each direction to two lanes in each direction. And this, in terms of capacity, it's not really needed until we get closer to this intersection. So that gives us an opportunity to do some different things. What we're thinking about doing as part of this project and how we would interface with the roundabout project is we would put in what's called buffered bike lanes. So we'd have bike lanes over on the side of the road adjacent to the curb, and then there'd be a striped out area between the cycle path and the travel lane. So that gives cyclists an increased sense of comfort, especially adjacent to traffic that's generally traveling between 40 and 50 miles an hour along that stretch. So that's one improvement. As far as thinking way long term down the road, and this is something that would really have to come out of the bike master plan to gauge the community's interest in something like this, but instead of those buffered bike lanes, we could have perhaps a separated Class 1 path running along the south side of the road, similar to what was done on Shoreline. Build a little landscaped raised area separating the traffic lanes from the potential Class 1 along the south side. So there's a lot of room to play with here, just because it is a wide street and it really opens up possibilities of things we can do. I said the bike master plan is a great forum to think long term and create a vision for cycling on the corridor. What we're doing is more paint. We think it'll improve things for cyclists, definitely, but there is opportunities in the future to go even beyond this. One thing I didn't mention, and I'm really sorry, when we had the public meeting in November, one thing we were envisioning as part of the project would be a traffic signal at the City College West Campus driveway. And it's not so much a collision problem that we have at that intersection, but it's congestion and it's pedestrians scattering across the street trying to get to the bus stop for westbound Cliff Drive. But there hasn't been a really strong collision history there like we've had in other parts of the corridor for cyclists. But nonetheless, due to the congestion in between classes, especially when students try to leave and everybody's trying to get on the campus and off the campus at the same time, traffic just really backs up onto campus. Like you can't even see the end of the queue. It's so bad. A traffic signal there would definitely improve operations. But because the traffic signal is more justified from a congestion perspective and not necessarily a collision reduction perspective, we've since learned that it's not something that Caltrans would fund through this grant. They've kind of changed the way some of the things some of the qualifiers for this grant cycle. So unfortunately, it's not something that we can include. Still appears to be a need there. It's not a high safety need compared to some of the other things in the city, but from a congestion relief perspective, it would definitely be an improvement. Another one of those unfunded needs that we have, though, along the corridor. So sorry I didn't mention that during the presentation.
Kathleen?
Hello. I lived up on the Mesa for a number of years I'm trying to remember, starting in the early 70s. And what I'm really, really impressed with that the community wanted things to be slowed down. The sense I get from the comments they made are slow down traffic. And living on Mohawk Road, as I did, and using the shopping center, I noticed then, as a mother with young children, and to this day, that it is not a friendly place to take your child in a stroller and walk to the market. Mm-hmm. And I'm delighted that the city now has the road and we can make some improvements. And I do remember, my memory might be faulty, but I do recollect, I believe, that there was one pedestrian fatality in the 70s, an elderly gentleman. And that street at sunset is deadly. I've always been very nervous driving into the sunset on Cliff Drive, especially when I used to live there, and then turning into my street. So having experienced the modifications on Milpas that have been so helpful, when you see flashing lights, if there's a pedestrian, I think it's going to be really important on Cliff Drive to not only slow the traffic down, but ensure that there's some very safe pedestrian crossings. There's the ones at Milpas, and then there's the ones down on Cabrillo, where we have plants and flowers in the middle and the pedestrian island. Mm-hmm. Both of those concepts seem to be very helpful and make people more comfortable walking in these areas. Because I would really like to envision Cliff Drive feeling much more like a neighborhood route. And I would love to see that, because there's still lots of young families up on the Mesa. I would like to see that more, moms with kids in strollers feeling comfortable to go to the market rather than feeling like she has to get in the car for a 2-block drive because it's too dangerous to cross Cliff Drive.
Yeah.
So I have a question. How far do you go back on the collision history? And you said you have bicycle collisions. I just want a little more information on what collisions you've had, how long you've looked at it, and if you do have any pedestrian injuries or anything documented along that whole corridor.
Thank you. Very great questions and comments. As far as what collision data we can use to apply for this grant program, minimum 5 years, maximum 10. Oh. So kind of anything between 2004 and 14 is what we're looking at. So unfortunately, dating back to the 1970s doesn't help us for this grant program. Obviously, anytime you're dealing with 40, 45 mile an hour traffic, the potential's there. When there is a bicycle involved or pedestrian involved collision with those types of vehicle speeds, the outcome is typically not good. So the potential's there. As far as what types of pedestrian collisions we have had on the corridor, overall it's been pretty low. There was one around Camino Cama. There have been a few further down towards City College, but they're not. The challenging thing is they're not concentrated at one location. Whereas when we make a grant application, and we've used this same grant program, we're going to be doing 5 new enhanced crossings like the ones just mentioned on Milpas and Cabrillo later on this year. We've got 5 in the queue. At those locations, one of them is State Street in Kayapala, Colorado, up by Mackenzie Park. When we do our collision map, there's a big red dot on that intersection because collisions are happening over and over again in the same location. So when we make a grant application, we can point to a really specific location with a really specific improvement, and the Caltrans and the federal government are confident that the money that they're putting into the program is going to address the problem. When we look at Cliff Drive and everything's so spread out like that, it's hard to say putting in a crossing here is going to address collisions that happened over here and over here. So we get less competitive as far as our grant applications when we include features like that.
I just would hate to see a phenomena where we would have a very sad situation like on Milpas when we lost a teenager and then finally did something. Doesn't mean that, I don't want there to be one big thing happen on Cliff Drive that finally forces people to affect things. And I guess I have one other comment. When I spend time up there, I live in Hidden Valley now, so I still drive up on the Mesa quite a bit. It's not at all unusual to see people kind of scooting across the street where I'm going to date myself for sure. The ice patch used to be the skate rink, ice skating rink. It's an accounting firm and a bunch of offices now. But you see people scooting across that street, jaywalking. Yeah. It's not at all unusual. Maybe going from that restaurant, that new vegan restaurant, over to the other side, or from the businesses scooting across to have lunch somewhere in the Albertsons Mall. So I think that the Camino Cama Oliver, that's super, but I don't love that it's 40 to 45 or 50 miles an hour on that whole road, personally. I think it would be great if it was slower all the way from Las Positas to City College. So that's my personal bias. If anything we can do, islands and narrow lanes that encourage people to drive slower through there would be great. So that's
Thank
my
you.
2 cents. Thanks.
Okay, Ed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, Mr. Bailey, I have a question regarding, and was it really back in 2011 when we did the Cliff Drive? Wow.
Time flies, Mr. France.
Time flies. I remember we were looking at speeds right immediately before we did that change, and I'm wondering if you all had any input on any change in vehicle speeds since that transition along the section that had the road diet.
Mr. France, there hasn't been a significant change in speeds before or after. The prevailing speed before was, if I remember right, just over 45 miles an hour, and now it's 44 point some. So it's there hasn't been a significant difference in the speeds. One thing that would be a little bit different that we would do compared to the restriping that was done is we would have different lane widths. Caltrans uses 12-foot wide traffic lanes, whether they're on a freeway or a street cutting through the mesa. 12-foot lanes is their standard. The wider the lanes you have, the more comfortable people feel going fast. You're creating a more wide open environment for them. There's less what we call side friction. The more stuff you have going on around a driver, just the less comfortable they feel going fast, and they're likely to slow down a little bit. It's completely appropriate in urban environments to use 11-foot lanes, even 10-foot lanes. There's even some places that use 9-foot lanes in really constrained areas. But we would narrow the lanes a little bit in favor of probably a little bit wider bike lanes, probably a little bit wider center turn lane like we did on Milpas Street. That'd have a bit of a calming effect. It wouldn't be significant, but it would be probably less than what's being experienced currently between Meigs and City College.
Yeah. And I guess I had a comment. So it's do you pronounce it HSIP grant or HSIP?
Either.
Okay. So this HSIP grant is, we're specifically talking about the bicycle lanes because there are bicycle collisions, injury collisions, even at least one death collision I know of, that are significant enough they're on the radar that we can apply for federal funds. It sounds like through this process, this project will also be really echoing the voices of a lot of Mesa residents who the bike lanes are important to, but there's all kinds of ancillary benefits in terms of the main street through the Mesa that this project also fulfills. And I think that's great. I think that's great that we're able to, that you all are able to bring home some funds to do some neighborhood improvements that were desired no matter what. And there's also an improvement for bicyclists and for the bikeway network. I wanted to just make a little bit of standing on a soapbox. So, for a lot of people, it seems really odd that the way these federal funds are divvied out is kind of after the fact, after injury. It's kind of a morbid system to award funds, and something that I'm very heartened to see happening more and more. And I think that might be happening with our mayor and the Association of Mayors is signing on to a sort of accord for Vision Zero of really looking to what would our roadway system look like if it worked with zero fatalities, minimal injuries, zero fatalities. And I think that that's something that I'm hopeful that even if the federal and state awarding of funds is really based on that system, that the city will increasingly look at preventing dangerous roadways from the outset over and above what's available for HSIP grants. So thank you for this. And then another comment I want to make is about City College, because certainly Santa Barbara City College has this massive draw. I think we saw MTD with display of the articulated buses this week, which is a great improvement because of the volume of students taking transit. there's certainly beyond the capacity to park students and faculty, staff coming to the campus. We have significant issues with the Castillo underpass in terms of capacity and safety. And as we look at Cliff as the whole kind of project, as you get towards Santa Barbara City College, unfortunately, where Montecito goes up the hill and becomes, I guess, do you call it the viaduct? Goes and becomes Cliff. It's just kind of, there's too much need, there's not enough space, and it goes past a really dangerous intersection. And I'm really hopeful that the city can match the alternative transportation and safety efforts at Santa Barbara City College has been launching this year, and really look at improvements along Loma Alta to the main city, and also alternative connections to the campus, such as Rancheria. I think there's a long-standing project that kind of got shelved of Rancheria to connect adjacent the creek into the campus. Santa Barbara City College, when we talk about the Mesa, we can't forget about Santa Barbara City College and the sheer volume of people going to that campus every single day. And unfortunately, bicycling options are very limited just because of kind of the roadway design around the campus. So I hope that as you all look at this project, and I certainly think it's part of it, thinking about other kind of associated projects that could help improve circulation to the campus. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan?
Just one other comment. So a lot of the underlying message seems to be that the speed limit is still too high on that highway, and I mean on our neighborhood road now. And I see that in the last section here, you didn't put this on the board, but it says, why don't you just lower the speed limits?
Oh.
That's the question.
Yep.
And you've answered it by saying, if you don't mind, I'll read it. California Vehicle Code defines the procedure we have to follow to establish a speed limit. And if we don't follow that procedure, the speed limit is not enforceable. And it's based on prevailing speed. So as you say, the speed limit, the speed average has not gone down. And I would like to mention that in the Mesa paper, a month ago, I think, there was big article letter, by some resident that is just really upset that it's so fast still, and recommends that everybody slow down so that the prevailing speed would be measured lower. I just thought that was pretty great, but it seems unlikely to say the least. But I wondered what the question I have here is: what do you mean if we don't follow the state procedure, the speed limit is not enforceable? What exactly does that mean?
Well, for example, if we were to go put up 30-mile-an-hour speed limit signs on Cliff Drive, the police couldn't enforce those signs because the speed survey that we do,
right,
per the vehicle code, which sets out the procedure that we have to follow, says the speed limit should be set at 40 or 45 miles an hour. So we don't have the flexibility to deviate from that, and as soon as we do, then it becomes unenforceable. The police can't enforce.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with, it used to be CHP that would enforce it, now it's city police.
Oh.
Everybody has to.
Everybody in California has to play by these rules.
Okay, thank you.
But you're right, everybody votes with their foot on the gas pedal, so if everybody were to slow down by 5 miles an hour, then we could adjust the speed limit by 5 miles an hour.
Is it measured every year or?
It's every 7 years.
7 years?
Yep.
Thank you.
If you narrow the lanes and do modifications, then the speed might slow down. Then you could change the speed limit?
Yes. So we had to do a speed survey on Cliff Drive and Las Positas because we were taking those streets into the city's inventory from the state. So we had to sort of reestablish the speed limits. But the speed surveys that we did had the same results as what Caltrans had. So they were well done, well set. After the road changes configuration, though, legally we actually have to redo the speed survey because it is a different roadway configuration. So we will, and if there is a change in operating speeds, then there's potential.
Good.
Yep. And everybody votes with their gas pedal.
I'll just throw in my 2 cents. It's the last thing here. I wanted to echo everything everybody else has said, and I am also wishing that the speed on that road was slower. And I'm wondering what else you might be able to do to encourage people to drive more slowly. And I would definitely suggest that we make the travel lanes, as narrow as we safely can. And wondering if we could use maybe painted medians or buffered bike lanes or, even real medians in some places, just anything, any other tools that we have that would encourage people to slow down and make it more of a neighborhood street.
The speed people travel, like we were talking about lane widths, it's really based on the environment that they're driving through. If they're out in the middle of Kansas and it's a nice straight flat road, it's pretty inviting to go fast. But
Right.
if you incorporate roadway features like medians into your roadway and you start creating that side friction that we were talking about, people feel less comfortable going fast. They talk about traffic calming, that sort of thing. It's really less appropriate to do traffic calming in the traditional sense, like speed humps and that sort of thing, on a principal arterial street. I mean, we have to remember this street needs to move goods and people.
Right.
Doesn't have to be at 45 miles an hour, but it still needs to move goods and people. So we can't look at things like speed humps, but certainly things like medians. Trees are a great traffic calming feature because they create this more closed-in environment. So things like that, just changing the feel of the road, is really what would have to happen in order to bring the speeds down. Unfortunately, the amount of funding that we think we can get for this project won't go too far beyond paint on the ground. But I know some of the members of the Mesa neighborhood are interested in doing more physical improvements in the future.
Yeah, I would be in support of that as well. But in the meantime, I'm just wondering if there are more things that can be done with just paint, just perceptually narrowing the road, making it feel like there's more friction, to encourage people to slow down so we can get those legal limits. Yes, Mr. Byrne.
I'm not quite understanding how these surveys work and how often they're reevaluated, but when did the city take on Cliff and Las Positas from Caltrans? When did that occur?
It was January 2014.
Okay, so just a year ago. Okay, so wouldn't that invite or mandate a reevaluation and require a new survey with new parameters to really not only encourage but say why we need to lower the speeds?
It did, and we did. So there was a speed survey done by the city when it became a city street. And but essentially we're measuring the same traffic that, December 2013, same traffic a month later, January 2014. People didn't change the way they drive on the street just because overnight it became a city street. So essentially we were measuring the same thing that Caltrans did. It's just that we had to go through the motions because it's now a city street.
Mr. Bailey, if I could ask one last question on this, just
Absolutely.
because clearly this is of such interest. Just to get into the details, because I think I recall the state changing a couple years ago from like the whatever 80th percentile from the 90th percentile in terms of, so it's not the average speed, but it's like the percentile within the breakdowns of
Right.
median speeds. Is there any way that we're even close to getting down like 5 miles an hour on posted speed, or do you recall when you all last had that conversation?
Mr. France, it's the 85th percentile, and that didn't change. So just a description of the 85th percentile speeds. If we went and measured the speed of 100 drivers, and say they ranged from 15 miles an hour up to 40 miles an hour, and as soon as we count the 85th, that's where we would set the 85th percentile speed. So that might be 36 miles an hour. It's kind of getting to the top of the range. That's the 85th percentile. That didn't change, but what did change in the vehicle code was the ability to round up or down. It used to lock you in. Like if you were at 42.6 miles an hour, you had to round up to 45. But if you were at 42.4, you could round down to 40. And now we have the flexibility to go either way. I can't remember exactly how close we were to potentially lowering it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for your efforts.
Thank you.
I have one. Sorry, but I can't let this go without just asking. Since the striping and all that hadn't changed yet, right? When you did the state did their measurement, and then a month later the city did their measurement, but there were no changes on the road by then. So
the changes were done in 2011, and so we did our survey in 2014.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah. So if we go through with these changes, then we'll have to do it again, and we might have different results.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All in all, I think it's a great step in the right direction.
Thank you.
And I'm very excited to see this happen and have every hope that you'll be successful with the grant application.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I think we're all finished. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
There's a motion on the item.
Oh, we have to.
On item 5, there's a motion, a recommendation from staff. You don't have
sorry.
to vote on it.
Oh, that we receive a report? I reject this report.
Oh, sorry. My bad. I thought it was circulation element. So, before you adjourn, I want to announce that there will be a March meeting that we're planning. So if you could put it on your calendars, that would be great. And it's exciting that we have enough to start having more meetings. So please plan on that for March 26th.
March 26th.
At 5:30 or 6?
That'll be at 5:30.
Okay. Now do we adjourn?
Sure. I think there's a motion. Second.
Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye. All right. Good night.